Good day, everyone. As promised, this is Module 6, Portfolio of Evidence Walkthrough. So what we're going to be doing is really just going through the formative side and the summative side to make sure that we understand completely what we are supposed to do. So as I've mentioned a little bit before, formative means that we need to show the assessor that we understand the concept, that the concept is understood, that we are able to academically be able to understand it and conceptualize and be able to work from there. Summative looks at the application of the concepts or the academic theory. So you'll find that there's a very significant shift from the one being show me that you understand to show me that you can do. And so you'll see the differences between the formative and the summative sections. So let's start at the beginning. So you'll see over here is just a table of contents in terms of what is covered. You'll see that there's an assessment plan. There's obviously the declaration of authenticity that I should have gone through already to say that this is your work, that you may not copy, do not plagiarize. If you're working in groups, please use your own voice to show us your understanding. Then there on page number 5, there's the instruction to the learner. So please read through that and make sure that you understand exactly what is needed and what the layout needs to be. So remember on each page that there needs to be the unit standard. So the unit standard are found on the covers of your workbooks. So you can always go back to that, make sure that they correlate. And then please put your name, your ID number, and then which questions you are attempting. So that when you print it out, at the bottom, always remember to sign and date. That just makes sure that we know that it's authentic. Okay, so also just take through all the other rules. And then we're going to go into the formative assessments. So let's go straight there. So the formative assessments are brought through on the next page, which is page number 7. So question number 1, which is on page 7, let us go to where you will find the explanations. Okay, so question 1, A, B, and C. Number A, why should managers or supervisors manage individuals and team performance in their organization? Well, the theory is in your unit standard workbook, and that's on page number 4 and 5. Now, again, remember, you can read through this and understand the concept immediately, and you can put down your own phrasing in terms of what you understand. If you get stuck, then I'm going to be giving you the page number so that you can go back, reread it, and just make sure that you're on the right track. I never want you to get stuck. So that's why we have these videos that you can go back and go, oh, okay, where would I find the theory? Just to make sure that I have double checked that I'm in the right ballpark. Okay, so why should managers and supervisors manage individual and team performance in their organizations? Page 4 and 5 in your workbook should cover that. Then state and explain the characteristics of effective performance goals. Now, all of that should be on page 9 of your learner guide. Then identify and describe legislation relative to individual and team performance in organizations. So all of the legislation that we've been speaking about, especially in this section, is on page 11, 12, and 13 of your workbooks. Then question number 2. This relates very much to you. So we can't really give you too many guidelines because you sort of have to understand the answer to this question. So the next question, question number 2, says, what is your career path? Explain the importance of aligning performance goals and measures and development plans to your career path. So if you know what your career path is supposed to be, then identify why you are learning skills before you perhaps need them. So remember to use that as the basis. Then B, performance measures provide a tool for organizations to manage progress towards achieving predetermined goals defining key indicators of organizational performance and customer satisfaction. Describe the following measurers used to measure employee and team performance. So quantity, quality, time, and cost. Now, why do we use those specific indicators? To make sure that people are on track. So page 15 and 16 of your workbook will cover that. But ultimately, in your own business, you know why you need to track quantity, track quality, track time, and track cost. Then list 4 examples of relevant stakeholders that you should obtain agreement from, identifying performance goals and measures, and formulating development plans. So, in your organization, who are those stakeholders that should be consulted when you put together your performance measures? So, is it your managers, HR, teammates? Is it people that are allied, maybe suppliers, customers? So, tell me, who are those relevant stakeholders that should be consulted in developing performance measures? All right. If you want a exhaustive list, you can always go to page 38. All right. Question number 3. Explain the importance of stakeholder buy-in when setting performance goals and measures, as well as formulating development plans. So why on earth should we be consulting our teams, our employees, when we are putting together the goals and the measures? So quite a simple thing, but it is something that you would need to explain. So if you want a little bit more in terms of that, it's page 38 in your workbooks. Right. Then identify and describe different types of performance evaluation techniques. Now remember, in the brackets is always going to be a number. That's how many key points you should be tackling in your portfolio. So on page number 42 to 48, they go into depth in terms of quite a number of evaluation techniques. Now you choose 8 and just give us an understanding of those 8. Okay, so there's 11 that should be listed. You give us an indication of the 8. Also, ones that perhaps you use that aren't in the material. Great, then question number 4. Explain the importance of recording and updating employee performance records. So there's 4 marks to that. But on page number 51, they will give you some theory. Then explain the importance of giving feedback, performance feedback to employees. So why should we not just give them the numbers and then just walk away? What do we have to do? We have to give feedback. Now, why should we give that feedback? The academics, the theory behind it is page 58, but out of your personal experience, share some reasons why we give employees feedback. Then list 4 characteristics of effective performance feedback. So one thing is why we give it, another thing is how to give it. So what are those characteristics? And page 60 and page 61 will cover those. Now we move to section B. Now section B is far more practical. It tries to say, now that you understand performance measures, targets, objectives, can you translate that into how to actually do it? So task number 1 gives you an outline of a case study. Okay, so please read through the case study. This is for someone called Anele, and Anele needs to be measured on their performance. So there are 5 questions, A, B, C, D, and E, and you will take that scenario and you will tell me what set performance goals and measures and formulate a development plan for Anele. So based on the case study, how would you set performance measures? What kinds of measures, what kinds of objectives would you set for them, and formulate a development plan? Then what are the key competencies required by Anele to achieve the performance goals that you have identified? Then what are some of the techniques that you can use to evaluate Anele's performance after a period of time? Okay, so now they're going to be executing, implementing. How are you going to monitor and assess using the techniques that you have been taught? Then explain the importance of monitoring and assessing Anele's performance on an ongoing basis against performance goals. So why do you have to monitor and assess? What is it going to do for Anele? What is it going to do for the organization that you monitor and assess? And then why should you keep record of Anele's progress? What are the reasons for keeping records of the development? Okay, so that's up to you. Read the case study, answer those 5 questions. Then these are some of the things that we have already done. So task number 2 in front of your classmates, conduct a training session on how to set performance goals and measures. Now, thank you for doing that, and I will give you feedback when I see you in person, and then I'll also mark your portfolio guides on that page, and I will sign it off. So thank you to everyone who has done that. Then, those are the evaluations, those are the assessment criteria. You are also going to do a role play, and that role play is going to be done in person. And so there are 3 scenarios. There is Loyiso and Wandi and a team. Now, they have all performed at a certain level. You are going to read how they have performed, and you are going to role play you giving feedback to that specific person. So obviously, you need to take a look at the performance measures, what they are, how they were rated, and then you got to see, are there development areas, and you need to address those development areas as well as recognize those areas where they have done incredibly well. So part of that exercise is to show me in real life that you are able to give good feedback that's going to be critical in the development of these employees as well as this team. Okay, so you will see over there is some background at the bottom of page number 12, so please read through that. And then there is the performance measures. 1D, their background situation is over here, and this is their performance measures. And the team, IT Solutions formed a team, and how did they do? And you're going to be able to give them some feedback based on what you have seen. So this is the role play observation checklist. So when I see you doing the role plays, then I will give you feedback and make sure that you are competent in how to give feedback. So take a look at the evaluation criteria, just so that we are all aware of what I'll be looking out for. Okay, now we are moving to the second unit standard. So the second unit standard is US 242813, but it really revolves around strategy. So we're going to be looking at strategy, and I think we had a really good discussion in terms of what strategy was, what we need to look out for, what are the key points, why strategy works, why it doesn't work. All of those kinds of things are going to be brought through in the formative assessment. So define the term overall strategy. So what would you find in an overall strategy? You're starting a business. What do you need to put in place in order to guide and give direction? So think of some of the concepts we covered. Then define the term business strategy. So overall strategy gives the overall direction. Business strategy is more specific. And what is business strategy? Give me an understanding. But you'll see a lot of it on page 5 of that specific workbook. Then what do you think the overall strategy of your organization is? Okay, so quote from the mission and vision statement, and then state the overall direction that your business is going in. So again, one of the easiest ways is to connect with your website, also to start having those discussions with your managers to try and understand what the mission, what the vision, and what the business strategy of your organization is. Then give 3 examples of key success factors that influence your organization's success. So what are those success factors that they are continuously monitoring? Because you are successful in the key areas, then you should be successful in your overall mission, objectives, and goals. So what are the 3 key success factors that you find in the business that are measured and that are constantly communicated? Then identify the elements of the overall strategy that refer to your own work and give examples. So in your work, in your division, in your department, in your team, what are those key success areas, okay, that are constantly being monitored? Because if you guys are successful, then obviously that spills over to the organization's success. So what are the elements of the overall strategy that are vital to your team, your department, or your division? Then name and explain the steps for implementation of a strategy in a strategy-focused organization. So that is number F. And if you want to go through the theory is on page 7 and page 8 of your workbook. Okay. Then we spoke about the advantages and the disadvantages of a strategy. So that is G. So look at 4 advantages of having a strategy and 4 disadvantages of having a strategy. It is discussed on page 6, and so you can get some ideas from there. Then, what are the 5 forces that impact on business strategy? What are the 5 forces that impact on business strategy? So that's on page number 10. There's a whole model. So take a look at those forces that they talk about and that they actually influence business strategy. All right. Then question number 2. Identify the objectives and activities for your own area of responsibility. Remember that your area of responsibility includes your team, your section, and your department. In other words, what is it that your team or section has to do on a daily basis? Explain this on the basis of the standard operating procedures in your organization. Also explain the goals, performance outcomes, outputs, key performance areas, key performance and objectives of your team or section. So it's really just going into what is the strategy of your business, of your area that you are in control of or that you are part of. So that we quite aware of, yes, there's the overall strategy, but there's a specific strategy that applies to your team, your section, or your department. So explain the standard operating procedures. So what areas do you guys focus on in terms of guidelines? The goals, the performance outcomes, the targets, the key performance areas, the key performance objectives of your area. So just flesh it out as much as you possibly can. Then identify the role of your group in class in terms of the overall strategy of the training provider and explain this to the rest of the class. Also explain the feedback mechanisms that exist in terms of the training process, assessments, and final accreditation. So you guys are part of a training intervention. You guys are all on a learnership. And so what is your role in making sure that this training intervention is successful? So what part do you have to play? Also, what feedback mechanisms exist in terms of the training process? So you will have training evaluation that can give us some feedback in terms of how we are doing. We also assess your work to make sure that you are growing. Then also you have managers and partners in the training that make sure that you are changing and you're making changes as a result of the program. And then if you are finally accredited right at the end of the process, what benefits does that have to the organization? What benefits does that have to us as the training provider? And what benefits does that have to you as a specific individual going through an intervention? So show me what role you have in terms of this training process. Okay, so that is that section. Then formative assessment 3. So this is the third block that we looked at, the third set of unit standards. So let us go there. So question number 1. It talks about Tando. Tando is a secretary at KH Manufacturing. After her performance appraisal session with her manager, she was advised to improve her time management skills by using a task list. Now, Tando is clueless about a task list, so you need to explain to Tando what a task list is and what its purpose is. So here's someone totally new to time management. Help her to put together a task list. Why should you put together a task list and what benefits is it going to have to her? Then question number 2 is describe the process of creating a task list. So if you want to go to the theory, go to page 6 in your workbook, and that's going to help you with the process. Then number B says create a task list based on any work-related task of your choice. So here is a specific objective that you have as a team or as an individual. Show me what underlying tasks or subtasks need to be done in order to achieve that specific objective or goal. That's going to help me to see that you understand what a task list is. Okay, question number 3. Identify and describe resources that are crucial when executing work-related tasks. So what are the resources that you require in order to do the tasks in your business? Now, there's a whole bunch of them, and the best thing to do is just to think of what materials, equipment, resources you require in order to achieve the goals that you have. So what resources are crucial in your job? Then question number 4. So how can one ensure that all actions are undertaken in line with his or her diary entries? So you have an employee. You can look at their diary. Would you know that they are executing what they are doing? So how would you know about that? How do you make sure that their tasks are in line with their diaries, or they are using their diaries to maximum effect to make sure that their tasks are done? So page 28 talks a lot about that in your workbook, and so that can definitely help you. All right, then let's take a look at question number 5. So A, describe the procedure of assigning tasks to team members. So this is very much about delegation. So we talk about delegation and assigning tasks on page 35 and onwards in your workbook. So if you want to see the procedure of assigning tasks, now remember, you might have a different procedure, and you are absolutely justified in talking about your procedure of assigning or delegating tasks. Then identify ways in which stakeholders can be informed about tasks that are being undertaken by your team. So as a team, when you guys are completing the task list, how do you report back? How do you give feedback? How do you give information? What kinds of processes do you use in order to make sure that the stakeholders are kept informed of the progress of the tasks that are being undertaken? Then number C, identify the reasons why a task list can be amended during task execution. So sometimes the priorities change. Sometimes the tasks change in that specific day. Why? What are the reasons for changing your specific task list? Okay. So make sure that it's practical. Then D, assume that you are the team leader. What ways can you use to monitor the execution of tasks by the team members? How do you make sure that they are executing their tasks? That they don't just say something and it's not happening at ground level. How do you monitor? How do you assess? How do you make sure that the execution and implementation is actually happening? And then the last one is explain the importance of reporting completed tasks. So you've completed a task. Why is it important to keep on reporting what's going on? What does it benefit the organization to make sure that reporting channels are constantly being updated? Okay, so that is question number 5. Okay, now section B is a little bit more practical. So the first thing that it asks you to do in section B is to list your daily work tasks. Okay, so think about an average day in your life. Tell me what the tasks are that you normally do. Now, we did this in class, but now it's just about formalizing it and putting it in your portfolio of evidence. So list your daily tasks and place them in any order. Then number B says, now that you've taken all your tasks, show us how you prioritize them based on the Eisenhower Matrix. And so the Eisenhower Matrix are those 4 different blocks. And remember, certain ones are very important and urgent. Some are urgent but not important. Some are important but not urgent. And some are not urgent and not important. Which ones come first? And how does that inform your prioritization? So show us how you then take your tasks and then prioritize them accordingly, according to the matrix. Right, so that is task number 1. Task number 2, assume tomorrow you have the task of coordinating an in-house training for PAs in your organization. So that's PAs, which are personal assistants in your organization. You are required to create a diary to record all the activities that you need to do tomorrow. And then that information needs to be recorded systematically. So here's a table. Now put that table together and show me how you would put together the day based on the task of coordinating an in-house training for the PAs in your organization. So what would you do at 7? What would you do at 7:30? What would you do at 8? so that you make sure that the workshop is being done successfully. So remember, there needs to be preparation, there needs to be planning, there needs to be execution, and there needs to be a bit of monitoring. So show me what your day would look like if that was your main task for the day. And so show me a systematic process that you would put in place in terms of blocking your time. Okay, so that then would be out of 138 marks, and then we'll see how much you achieved to see if you are competent or not yet competent in that specific unit standard. Then in the fourth and last module that we looked, or the fourth and last unit standard that we looked at, now we're going to be answering some more questions. So section A, question number 1 says, using an example, define the concept of a team. So what is a team? Okay, and what is a team in your industry? What is a team in your reality? So why do we have teams? And then explain to me what a team looks like in your specific reality. So that's using an example, define the concept of a team. Then we need to differentiate between the characteristics of a group and the characteristics of a team. Now, a team is a loose association of people, and a team has a specific objective. That changes the way that they look at everything. So there's a nice little workflow, and that's on page number 5 of that workbook, and that helps you just to refresh your memory in terms of what those two different things are. Then question number 2, explain the purpose of teams in construction projects. So you understand what the purpose of teams are, okay? We understand why they exist. But within a construct of building a house or building a building, why is it so important to have specific teams? So the purpose of teams is one thing, but try and put it into the reality. We're going to build a house. Why do we need teams? What is it about teams that is going to make sure that that house is built better, built quicker, built under a budget? So tell me how teams would make sure that this project is going to be more successful than if you just used a group of individuals, or if there was no plan in terms of putting people together. Then B, question 2, number B, list 10 possible roles and responsibilities for a receptionist. So think about a general receptionist. What are their roles and what are their responsibilities in their job? So put together 10. Then question number 3, assume that you are a team leader at a bank. You are in charge of a team of consultants who assess and approve home loans. Now identify the roles and responsibilities that you would perform as a team leader. So not what your team would fulfill, what a team leader would do. So it's always going to be slightly different when you're looking at a team leader versus a team member. So as a team leader, what roles and responsibilities would you have in context of that team? All right, then question number 4. Number A, define the following concepts: authority, accountability, and responsibility. So we had a great discussion about those 3 concepts. And if you want to go a little bit further, page 18 and 19 in your workbooks is where you're going to find them. Then outline the steps of what needs to be taken into account when organizing a group into teams. Now, we also took a look at that on page 19 and page 20. So taking a group of people, now we're going to put them into a team. How is that process going to go? So 19 and 20 really look at that specific process. Now there's some practical things that we need to think through. So section B, task number 1. You are required to form a group of 5. So it's going to probably be easier if you guys just connect via social media or via WhatsApp, or even have a in-face discussion at some point. But it's fairly simple in terms of this process. Now assume you and members of your group are work colleagues who work for the city of Johannesburg, the Rates and Taxes Division. Okay, so this is going to be fun. City of Joburg, Rates and Taxes Division. You have been given a task to collect money from clients with overdue accounts. Now think of that context, okay? Now you've got to be very aware of what you are coming into. So define the individual and team objectives for this task. So put together individual objectives as well as team objectives for your group. Then develop tasks, performance plans, targets, and standards for this task at hand. So think about the task that has to be achieved. What are the tasks that you're going to have to put in place? What are the performance plans? What are the targets? And what are the standards that you're going to have within this team that is going to collect overdue rates and taxes? Then develop a set of standard operating procedures that you will follow when implementing your plan. So this is something that you could divide up. Think about what SOPs would need to be developed, and maybe each one of you can take one SOP and flesh it out and then put it together. Then what potential difficulties are you likely to face, and how are you going to manage them? Now, you would understand exactly what difficulties they would expect, because if you were on the receiving end of one of these calls, you would know what's going to happen. So think about the difficulties and how are you going to preempt it and put plans in place. Then the last one is, how is the team going to monitor its performance against agreed targets and timelines? So think about it in terms of monitoring performance. What would you use in terms of keeping the team on track so that you are exceeding your performance measures and your time estimates? All right, so that should conclude your formative assessment section. So that I'm going to leave with you on one video, and then I'm going to start a second video that's going to look at the summative assessments, which is definitely the more practical and the more of the implementation of the concepts that we have covered. So use this as a tool to be able to go through your formative assessments and help you to develop your portfolio of evidence.